Hello, it's just me here again with a weekly message. I hope, as well as COVID, you've survived snow, flood, and all the other sort of horsemen of the apocalypse that seems to have been visited upon us in the last week or so. So yes, hope you're doing okay. Um, and that kind of fits in with what I want to talk about. I think my theme for this week is going to be hope. Um, and what that means for us as Christians. Now, obviously, we see some hopeful signs around. I've just been looking at the figures for COVID infections. I mean, they are coming down, perhaps not as fast as we'd like, but certainly not what they were a month ago. And also, of course, kind of, it's like two slopes, isn't it? Intersecting that we have. I think we need to say a really very good vaccination program. I know there's lots of sort of controversy about it in the EU and that, but I have to say, I think that as a country locally, we've done marvelously. It's been excellent. It's been incredible, really, how we've been able to um, start that vaccination program. So I do want to praise where praise is due. That's excellent and good news, and a lot of people now have the protection that they need. So there are hopeful signs. I suppose the time I suppose I increasingly feel this. The time I talk about hope most, and the time I feel slightly vulnerable talking about hope, is of course at funerals. Um, I think it's very important to talk about hope. That's what we're there to do. We're to preach the good news of Christ crucified and risen from the dead, the one who has conquered death and gives us the hope of a life that continues with God. I think that's very important. It's a very important part of Christian hope. Now, of course, not everybody these days believes in any sort of existence after death. And perhaps even some Christians are quite wary about it. I'm afraid I'm a bit of a pessimist, really, because I think if you take away sort of any hope of continuing existence after death, I'm very unhopeful, really. I know sort of people have tried to produce a version of Christianity that's missing, the afterlife and the end of history and the resurrection, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's fundamentally lost. I mean, I do want to say slightly sort of pessimistically that, probably if you look at human history, probably as many people have died in fairly early childhood as have reached adulthood. I do sort of think of, Hobbes' life is nasty, brutish, and short. I mean, it might be rather depressing, and actually, we live in a bubble of privilege as far as that's concerned generally. But I do think, yeah, human existence as a whole, if this is it, taken sort of universally over history, is pretty unpromising, and I think kind of puts the lid on hope. So that's a bit downbeat, but as I say, I do stand at the front of funeral services and want to say there is hope, and that hope lies in God. I'm also at that point acutely aware, and I think this is really important, that you've got to really look inside yourself and say, do you believe this? Because otherwise it is quite exploitative. It's, you have people who are terribly, terribly vulnerable. They've lost somebody that they've loved, and you're giving them a hope that that person's existence still continues with God, and at the last we shall all be reunited. Now, you might want to sort of put various caveats around that, but that's what you're offering them. And I think if you're going to offer them that, like any sort of good deal, you have to sort of really look inside yourself. And I often find myself, as I'm saying those words, thinking, what am I promising these people? Am I sure about this? And yeah, I mean, in that I search in myself, I'm as sure as I can be. Of course, none of us can be sure. It is faith in things unseen. But I want to then sort of think more generally about hope. And hope, although, as I say, I think it has to include uh, life after death, hope isn't restricted to that. I mean, in the Bible, it's quite clear there's all sorts of hope. Quite a lot of hope is to do with this life. Look at the history of Israel. Even in the darkest times, there were always hope that things will get ready, will get better for God's people in the here and now. It isn't all just, it's all awful and it'll all, at the end of history, it'll all get better. But I do think that the word hope has been degraded, and the danger is when we hear the word hope in a religious context or in the Bible, that actually, as I say, we associate it with the way we use the word hope now. Because I think often if I use the word hope now, particularly in a kind of everyday context, it's rather vague, and often it's excuse. If I say, I really hope to be at the meeting on time, I really hope to be at that thing, and if somebody says that to me, I often think, no, that means they're going to be late, or no, that means they're not coming. They can't face saying, David, I really can't face another meeting with you chairing it, so I'm just not going to come. So they're going to say, I hope to be there, but etc., and we'll kind of leave as friends, but they're not going to turn up. So I wonder about the degrading of that word hope, because in the Bible it doesn't mean that at all. In fact, Tom Wright, so former Bishop of Durham, has written a book called Surprised by Hope. I think it's Tom Wright. If you remember, C.S. Lewis writes the book Surprised by Joy, which is a pun, because C.S. Lewis quite late in life married a woman called Joy Davidson, having been something of a sort of confirmed bachelor. And Surprised by Joy was not only Joy Davidson, but also joy, as in the virtue, Christian virtue of joy. And so, as I say, Surprised by Hope is kind of Tom Wright's going on from that, saying that actually, hope is a very important thing for Christians that's sometimes lost. But what's the difference then between hope in terms of its Christian context and its everyday context, as I say, and I do take the everyday context to be slightly degraded. Hope in the Bible, I think, means something slightly different. It means something that is, when we talk about, faith is hope in things unseen. Hope in the Bible is always founded in God. And I think, unlike sort of, if I hope, the train system is going to get me to the meeting on time, or I'm going to get back from London, the point is train systems are not a great thing to hope in. It probably means we're not going to quite catch the train and we're going to be late. When the hope is in God, then, God doesn't go back on his promises. It is certain. But nonetheless, it's something that we haven't seen yet. We don't know. So if you take the word Revelation or Apocalypse, the last book of the Bible, which means sort of the unveiling, the showing, it is the sort of showing of things that are real, are going to happen, but we don't know them because they lie in the future. And I think that's always what the Bible means by hope. When it says the people hope for something, it doesn't mean that it's a vague kind of feeling it might happen, but it's probably not. What it means is they are pretty sure something's going to happen because it's God's promise to them. It's just it's not happening now. There's no sort of empirical sign of it coming yet. And so that hope, even when you're going through a hard time in the Bible, is a real cause for joy. So again, when we talk about, hope at funerals, I don't think we're talking about, you're very upset and vulnerable. Here's some vague religious platitudes which might make you feel a bit better. I think that's what I worry about at funerals. I think when I, say, the Christian hope is for a life with God where nothing that's good, love, joy, peace, all these things are not lost, but continue for eternity. I'm not saying that's vague. I'm saying, this is real. This is given us in Jesus Christ, in his resurrection from the dead. And it's certain, but it is unseen. It is beyond us. So I think, that's what the Christian hope means. And I think probably we need to be hopeful people at the moment. I mean, I say there are hopeful signs in this battle with COVID. And of course, in a sense, they do depend on sort of human ingenuity and fallibility. But I want to say, Christians are a people of hope. We are hopeful people. And in the end, our hopefulness is grounded in the fact that God is faithful to his promises, that even, and being realistic, as I say, about how sometimes difficult and dark human existence is, that hope in God is certain and sure, and therefore can be relied on. So I am hopeful. I continue to be hopeful, and I hope you are too. Thank you.